Got what I want about a nigga. We supply who. All right. Thought that song was relevant due to Maduro, which we're going to talk about in the next few moments. But this is attempt number 2 at Hippo Balls, week 18, coming to you live from the Hippo Den, Maduro edition. I recorded 30 minutes of Hippo Balls, and unfortunately, I took a picture instead of a video because I am very rusty. But week 18, that was Take Over Your Trap by Bankroll Fresh. Great song, and it relates to Trump running up on Venezuela. Come to your trap, take over your track. Congrats to the commish on a championship. Can't say I love it, but I got to take it. Congrats to me. I had a baby, Jacob, which is one of the reasons why there wasn't a lot of hippo balls. Also, ratings, sponsorship deals, and attention spans. But here we are for a long and drawn out history on Nicolas Maduro. So, as you all know, in the pre dawn hours of January 3rd of 2026, the U.S. launched a military operation in Venezuela and captured Maduro and his wife. Some background: Nicolas Maduro Moros, president of Venezuela starting in 2013 to a few days ago, of course, was the VP under Hugo Chavez until Chavez died, and then he became president. He started out as bus driver, which is a nice story. Maduro assumed presidency in 2013 after Chavez's death, and Venezuela started to get really, really shitty. And starting in 2014, had a wave of daily protests, which led to a decline in his popularity. And then he started repressing the dissent against him, which is basically saying he let stop having free speech in his country. An opposition-led National Assembly was elected in 2015 and moved to impeach Maduro in 2016. But Maduro said, "You can't impeach me because I'm not letting you impeach me." And Maduro maintained power through the Supreme Tribunal and the military, a bunch more protests and constitutional crises, and finally he rewrote the Constitution. And in 2018, he was reelected, but the president of the National Assembly, Juan Guaido, was declared interim president by the opposition legislation. And that started 4 years of presidential crisis. And in 2024, Maduro ran again and was elected again, even though the votes tallied showed that someone else had won. Maduro recently was listed as a terrorist by the US in November 2025 and considered head of an authoritarian government characterized by election fraud, human rights abuses, corruption, and severe economic hardship. But not all is bad with Mr. Maduro. He is a fan of John Lennon's music and his political activism for peace against war. This would be like saying Trump is a fan of Susan B. Anthony for her feminism. He also likes Led Zeppelin, and we'll get back into the music and why he likes music. But one of the funny points that came out recently, and you can't put it past Donald Trump, is that, and I'm pulling it up right now. Sorry, this is not 100% written well because there's a lot going on. But okay, so Trump, one of the reasons he decided to finally go after Maduro is this is a New York Times thing, though, by the way. This is a New York Times report, so it's pretty legitimate. Maduro's recent public displays, including dancing, were seen by some in Trump's team as mocking them and calling their bluff, according to people familiar with the internal discussions. They said the White House then followed through on its military threats because they didn't like that he was jocking around and dancing. It was one dance move too many for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Mr. Maduro, in late December, rejected an ultimatum from President Trump to leave office and go into gilded exile in Turkey. According to several Americans and Venezuelans involved in transition talks, this week he was back on stage brushing off the latest U.S. escalation, a strike on a dock that the United States said was used for drug trafficking, by bouncing to an electronic beat on state television while his recorded voice repeated in English, "No crazy war." And you'll see why Trump didn't like that. So here is the video of him getting it. All right. So pretty funny, doing the little Trump dance moves. Trump didn't like that. Thought he was taking shots at him, so he said, "Fuck around and find out," which is what the U.S. White House posted on Twitter after he was captured, which is normal. He also had some John Lennon stuff where he was give peace a chance and all this other stuff that he was saying. Anyways, Venezuela has a main reason why this happened. Not because he was dancing, even though that was part of it. Not because he was talking shit, even though that was part of it. Not because he's kind of Trumpy, that was part of it. But mainly because of oil, of course. Just like the Iraq War before, and us taking down Saddam Hussein, and Iraq not really getting much better, probably getting worse. And there's ISIS and Al Qaeda and all this other stuff. We go after Venezuela because, by the way, if you read the indictment, it's like they're charging him with possessing machine guns or attempting to possess machine guns in the United States, which doesn't really make much sense. Not a lot of drug talk. We'll see if the charges stick. I don't even know what happens if he's found not guilty. Do they just go back to Venezuela and become president again? Anyways, so back to Venezuela. They have a shit ton of crude oil. World's largest oil reserves, but its crude output remains at a fraction of capacity due to mismanagement, lack of investment, and sanctions. 17% of the global oil, or 303 billion barrels, mostly heavy oil, which is important to note. Heavy oil. So, one of the things is they have a bunch of heavy oil. There's different types of oil, and I've done all this research on oil instead of taking care of my kid for you guys. So heavy oils, like you have to filter it and process it and make it into regular oil so people can use it. But Venezuela sucks so bad that they just have a bunch of heavy oil and they don't like know how to process it, or they don't have the money or the infrastructure to process it. Now, you know who does have the money and the infrastructure to process it? Louisiana and Texas. We have two facilities in Louisiana and Texas that have processed heavy oil. So we get all this. We go in, fuck up, Maduro, take him, put him in New York jail, which is where Luigi and Diddy are, by the way. Hilarious. Also, Maxwell used to be there, Ghislaine Maxwell, SBF there, or it was there. But he's also amazing pictures, whatever. We'll get to it. But we run up there, take control of. By the way, that Trump says now that it's our country and that he's just going to lead it for a while. I don't know what that means. There is a petition online for it to become our 52nd state, 51st or 52nd. Don't it doesn't matter. One of our states. And Trump says he's just going to take control of it for now, and that our oil companies are going to come in and just take all their oil, and then we'll see what happens to the country. Vice president of Venezuela has now taken over, and she's talking out both sides of her mouth, and we'll get to her in a little bit too. Anyways, so heavy oil, we want all the heavy oil, we want all the oil reserves, and some of the reasons we want all the oil is because give me a second. I need a second. We're already at 7:45. This is going pretty slow. Got a lot more to talk about. Pop in your Adderall. Okay. So, yesterday, President Trump explicitly said we're going to have our very large oil companies go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the broken oil infrastructure, and start making money. I guess we're making money? Okay. Trump also said the U.S. will sell large amounts of oil pumped from Venezuela. And it's become even more strategic for the U.S. Aside from Venezuela, Russia has the largest heavy crude oil reserves in the world. So that's the other heavy oil, the oil that takes more work to do. So Russia has it. Tapping into Venezuela's heavy crude oil reserves effectively further weakens Russia's influence. This is also a geopolitical move. To top it all off, China is the largest buyer of Venezuela's oil. So this accounts for 5% of China's total annual oil imports. And as the U.S. gains control of Venezuela, this gives President Trump even more control over China. And Trump says he would sell some of this oil to China. So now we have China by the balls, we have Russia by the balls, we have Venezuela dead. This weekend's events in Venezuela will have major effects on the global economy, the macroeconomy. It's shifting stocks, commodities, bonds, and crypto. You know that Trump likes to be in everyone's pockets. Of course, China came out and called for the immediate release of Maduro and said you can't do that and it's against UN law and you can't just run up on people's countries and do whatever you want and then take it over and say it's ours and we're going to pillage all your stuff. UN says you're not allowed to do that. Trump came out and said the Monroe Doctrine says I can do whatever I want, and now it's the Donroe Doctrine, which was pretty cool of him to say, and that he can do whatever he wants, and now he's the president of Venezuela, even though it's this other lady, Delcy Rodriguez, who I think double-crossed Maduro, and Trump and Marco Rubio backdoored her and said, hey, I will let you be president, but we're going to take all your stuff, but you could still be president. We're not going to kill you and fuck with you too much. You can be president, kind of. And she said, all right, deal. Maduro's over there. He's like, here's the door code. Just go in and get him. That's what I think happened. Also hilarious, the Chinese ambassadors were there and they got caught in the crossfire. I don't know if one of our people that was cool with the Chinese people hit him up and they're like, yo, what are you guys up to? And they're like, not much, just chilling in Venezuela. Oh, who are you meeting? Nothing. It's kind of low key. Don't come through. And then we said LOL. Yeah, for sure. Another funny point on that and our process of going there and having the mission. It was saying that it was saying a tweet was saying that's where we get the news. Breaking, it has been revealed Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino used publicly available flight radar to track U.S. forces in the region to know if they were going to invade or not. And it's unclear if he realized that the U.S. can simply turn off transponders like they did last night to capture Maduro. So, not fair. U.S. turned off their location. He wasn't able to see if the U.S. was coming or not. Redo. You got to return Maduro and then run it back. Um, Also, to note, where we got Maduro, we brought him in, we put him on this ship. He took a cool picture in his Nike jumpsuit, which I'll show you. I got too many pictures of this Maduro stuff, but all right. So here we go, looking drippy. Look at that Nike tracksuit. Got the vapes, got the Beats headphones. Looking good. And we get him on this like U.S. Iwo Jima or something, and then he is transported to the New York jail where he takes a fun photo, thumbs up, and he has another costume change where he's walking through the jail, and here we go, looking good here still, and he says like Happy New Year and good night and see you when I see you, and does like double guns. He's been having like a decent time, it looks like. And then also here's another picture where he had another costume change. I guess they let him pack his clothes in a bag to go because he's changed clothes like 5 different times. Anyways, they indict him, and if you read this indictment from Pam Bondi, who of course is an idiot, but good for her, they're charging him with like possession of machine guns, and they're claiming that he had a stash in the U.S. that like some other guy had, but like he was gonna have them eventually. Doesn't make a lot of sense. There appears to be multiple defendants, and they're alleging that Maduro conspired to possess machine guns. So I don't know. Like I said, like I don't know how you're gonna prove that. And if he's not guilty, then do you still keep him? Is this a war crime? Is he a POW? Is it the Donroe Doctrine? Like, how do we have this guy? Do we have to give him back? If he's found not guilty, do we still keep him, or do we give him back to Venezuela? Also, to note, we are saying this guy's a narco terrorist and that he has all these drugs and machine guns and all this stuff. And that's why we got him. And Vance came out and said, I'm rambling, that's okay. Vance came out and said that it's all because of the drugs, even though Vance wasn't in the war room. To note, Marco Rubio, who's I think going to be the next pick by Trump. I don't think he's going to pick Vance as his successor. I think it's going to be Marco Rubio because Marco Rubio was there with Pete Hegseth, and they were chilling, and Vance didn't get the invite, but Vance is saying like I was busy, I was going to be there, but like I was in the bathroom. It doesn't matter. He's not in the pictures, which are pretty funny because they're on Twitter during the operation, and they're like they keep refreshing Venezuela to see if people are saying cool stuff or mean stuff about them, which is very funny in the picture. But Honduras, we just pardoned. Trump just pardoned Honduras ex-president convicted of being a narco terrorist and trafficking 400 tons of cocaine into the country. So why are we pardoning the Honduran president? Because he gave us money and that they don't have oil, but now we're charging this guy because he has oil, and maybe he'll get pardoned too if we give him something. I don't know. Okay. We're also talking about going into Cuba now and Mexico, and we're calling our shots. We're getting a little cocky, and we're saying like we're just going to take like all of it, and we're just going to play the game of war and like take all the countries, and like we'll let you guys know what we're going to do with them. So no one's happy about that. Getting back to Delcy Rodriguez. Delcy Rodriguez is the vice president. Reports coming that she made a deal with the Americans and backstabbed Maduro, and that's why it was possible for the Americans to capture Maduro so easily, because Delcy Rodriguez betrayed him and made a backroom deal with the Americans that she become the new president. Trump mentioned it explicitly at the press conference just held, but none of the journalists caught it. This means the regime still holds power, and yes, this may also be the deal Trump had made with Putin. It's not a regime change. There is no democracy. So all the Venezuelan people that are like, oh, we did it, we're getting like regime change, like we're about to get real democracy, like no, just Delcy backstabbed Maduro, and now Delcy's still going to be president, and Trump's just going to be like break us off like a little bit of oil, and like you can do whatever you want, you guys can still be authoritarian. And Delcy's like, that sounds good to me. Maduro's out, but the regime remains. There is no democracy, and Delcy Rodriguez's payment, Venezuelan oil, goes to Trump and perhaps Putin. The leader of the Venezuelan Democratic Opposition, Maria Corina Machado, who thinks she's about to be president and start a democracy, can forget about returning to Venezuela and forget about democracy. That's the rumor. That's the conspiracy theory. Here's also funny photos. The Washington Report post that I was talking about. Multiple images seem to show big screens where they search Venezuela on X. So there's in the background, you can see there's like Hegseth just blacked out. Rubio chilling. Trevor Lawrence set his Jag season single record. Okay, here it is. And then Trump's there, and they're all just hanging out. No Vance, not invited. Pretty funny. And okay, all right, we're getting off the rails here. I'm sorry, I've already recorded this once. Like I said, we're at 15 minutes. All right, so a few other times the U.S. has tried to enter Venezuela for one reason or another, oil, but we tried to overthrow him in 2020. A U.S. private security company, Silvercorp USA, attempted to overthrow Maduro, and of course, I wonder why a random private security company from the U.S. is trying to overthrow Maduro. I'm sure it has nothing to do with oil. In October 2020, Maduro was indicted by U.S. federal court on narco terrorism and conspiracy to import cocaine to the U.S. That was under Biden. In August of 2025, the DOJ put a $50 million price on his head, which Trump, by the way, says that now he's not paying anymore because he did it himself, and he's going to take the 50 million and maybe split it with Maduro. But no one's getting the 50 million. In December of 2025, we escalated things by seizing an oil tanker in their waters, which was NATO and UN were like, you can't just do that. And Trump's like, what are you going to do about it? Clearly nothing because they're pussies. So he's like, all right, nothing happened. So I'm just going to go over and take Maduro and take all the land. Back to the capture. January 3rd, 2026, large scale strike announced at 4:20 a.m. Nice by Trump via social media, because of course that's how we know everything these days. Trump posting on social media. That Maduro and his wife, were captured and flown out of the country. Like I said, the Chinese were there and they were not happy and bamboozled themselves. Being held in the Metropolitan Detention Center with Diddy and Luigi, charged with possessing machine guns. We already got into some other points. I've already gone over his outfit changes. Give me a second. What more do I got? Yeah. Maduro said goodnight and Happy New Year to reporters as he was being pushed through the New York Police Department, which was funny. Reporter asked Trump, you said Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras convicted of drug trafficking. And Trump said, yeah, he was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly, and Maduro's different. Um, what else do I got? What else do I got? Like I said, the Maduro dancing, he didn't like that. Oh, other funny note. There's a New York Times reporter who, at 4:30, which is 9 minutes after Trump made this post about Maduro on Twitter, New York Times guy has Trump's cell phone that I guess has been active this whole time. Calls him, first time ever calling him. Calls the president, rings 3 times. Trump picks up. 4:30, just smoking on that hater pack on Maduro, happy that they just got him. And he's like, hey, who's this? And he's like, the New York Times. Trump doesn't hang up and just talks to this guy for like 20 minutes. Trump loves when he like does something good, he'll talk to everyone and anyone. So if you call Trump on his cell phone, he'll just pick up and talk to you. Interesting point there. That guy from the New York Times says he called Biden once, and Biden like hung up and they like deported him. So Trump way cooler with the media when things are going well. Of course, if it's not going well, he calls you a pig and a slut and a horrible person. But when things are going well, very open to talking to the media. What else do I have? What else do I have? We're kind of having a good time, right? Oh, Polymarket. So Polymarket is this website where you can bet for and against things. It's a prediction market. So some insider trading, of course, because you know Trump and his boys like to wet the beak a little bit when they're going to do something. Polymarket had, is Maduro going to be out in 2025 or 2026? And you can bet yes or no, and it's like 87% no or 13% yes. And if you bet on yes, you bet $10 and you make $1 million. So at like 4:15 in the morning, 10 minutes before this was going to happen, a bunch of people in Washington with brand new accounts bet a bunch of money, and they won a bunch of money, which I'm sure was like Pete Hegseth and like Barron Trump. That's funny. Whether he's a POW or whether he's a prisoner is a big deal. Of course, we saw in Iraq that with Saddam leaving, this didn't work. We'll see what happens with Venezuela. Also, Epstein files, big distraction on the Epstein files. Is that going to be released? Oh, funny picture on that. Where's that? Where's that? I have a bunch of stuff that I saved. Oh, here we go. Maduro got the Epstein files, and he will be releasing them if he's out of jail. Can you see that? Yeah, he got the Epstein files. Doesn't matter. Wasn't that funny anymore. I kind of missed the point. Also, New York Times and the Washington Post knew about the strike beforehand because it got leaked. Because you know Pete Hegseth texts like everyone what's going to happen beforehand, but they didn't want to endanger military personnel from the U.S., so they decided not to run the story until it already happened. Good on the New York Times, good on the Washington Post. Do I have anything else? No, I don't think so. Fins up. Let's see if Quinn Ewers is the guy today. That would be fun. Do I have anything else? I'm trying my best here. All right. Here's the baby. Hippo balls out. See you next season unless some other cool stuff happens, and then maybe I'll come back.